people are going to suck and be awesome all the time, no matter who they are. And again, like, you're coming to watch a vampire story. So I wouldn't come, if you come see my Carmilla, I wouldn't come out with the expectation that, like, wow, like, lesbians are awesome, because I don't think that's exactly like, I mean, lesbians are awesome, but
Yes.
women are violent, and women have repressed wants, and people who grow up with repressed wants sometimes don't do things that they end up proud of, or sometimes don't make the best choices.
Hello and welcome to Theater Philadelphia, the podcast, or TPTP for short. My name is CJ Higgins, and I'm the Director of Operations and Programming at Theater Philadelphia, which is currently hosting the 2026 Philly Theater Week, a 10-day festival offering pay-what-you-can tickets to nearly 50 events in the greater Philadelphia area. Philly Theater Week runs from April 23rd to May 3rd, and you can learn more and get tickets at www.phillytheaterweek.com. Joining me today are members of the team behind one of those shows, My Carmilla. This adaptation of Carmilla reimagines Le Fanu's 1872 novella through a feminist, queer, and post-colonial lens, centering the story on the complex and dangerous relationships between Carmilla and Laura. The actors who play these characters swap roles for each performance, allowing repeat audiences to experience the story from multiple opposing perspectives. It is up to you to decide who is the real predator and who is the prey. Please join me in welcoming to the podcast Sabrina Caruso and Asha Bagal Kelly. Hello, you two.
Hello, thanks for having us.
Of course. So, for those who haven't gotten a chance to read the original novella, myself included, admittedly, can you catch us up on the story that you'll be adapting?
Yeah, so the original novella, which came out before Dracula, by the way, it's pretty short, but basically Laura is recounting this story of something that happened to her when she was about 18 years old. This mysterious young woman showed up at her doorstep and sort of came into her life and started to ingratiate herself, and she was a little weird. And then the story kind of takes a bit of a turn. We find out that Carmilla is a vampire, and a vampire hunter comes into town to, you know, get rid of her.
To hunt.
Sorry, that was a visual. We're in an auditory stake.
In case this is audio only, it's a stabbing stake motion, which you'll probably see clear as day on stage when you come to see the show.
It's an adaptation, so there are some things that we change.
Yes, I was going to ask because I wanted to hear because I hear an adaptation is being done through a feminist, queer, and post-colonial lens. And of course, I want to hear the details about that. So without spoiling the show for our listeners, what are the new approaches that you've taken to the original text to present it through these lenses?
Yeah, well, without spoiling anything, the big difference on our adaptation is where the novella kind of paints Laura as this victim of the story, and also a bit of a someone who maybe isn't taking responsibility for the things that are happening. We have Laura having a lot more active of a role in our adaptation, which is kind of why our tagline is a little bit who's predator and who's prey. Our novella kind of reimagined, or our adaptation reimagines their relationship and really makes the lines a little blurrier between who is really the perpetrator in that situation. And maybe the monster isn't the monster after all.
Asha, any thoughts?
There was one other thing in the novella. Remember, the general takes over the narration in like the last third. And we thought, why is a man coming in and taking over the story? That does not happen in our adaptation.
Good, beautiful. Yeah, no, this is the lesbian vampire story. Get out of here.
Exactly.
Yes, I was particularly interested in that question of who is the predator and who's the prey, especially because there's an unfortunate pattern in media around queer people, including queer women, being depicted as inherently predatory. That a lot of the romantic feelings that queer people have for those that they like have interest in is like primarily one-sided, like unreciprocated, and the woman carrying those feelings is often depicted as like quote unquote obviously undesirable. and extremely aggressive in their approach, often crossing boundaries. And of course, in the original, Carmilla is crossing quite a few boundaries herself, as vampires often do in these narratives. So I would love to hear more, like, if that's been a conversation in this adaptation in terms of like how the themes of like predator versus prey has been depicted in this like feminist queer adaptation.
I have thoughts, Asha, unless you want to go.
Why don't you go first and then I'll jump in because we've talked about this.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm
well,
sure.
and I'll just start off by saying, and we have more info about this on our website if you're curious, but it's so cool that the history of vampire media and queerness, specifically sapphic, lesbian queerness, have always been tied. Like we said, the story of Carmilla predates Dracula by 25 years, and there are some lines from the original novella included in our performance that you would think we added in to make it modern and more apparently
Mm,
queer. The OG
hmm.
story is very queer in and of itself, but yes, with the idea that the person, like being the pursuer in this queer relationship, is always going to be the perpetrator, and that being a lot of the ways that it's been depicted. There's still moments where Carmilla. I mean, Carmilla is a vampire, right? A vampire is going to do what it's going to do. But we have included some moments where maybe the audience can gauge how consent is at play and like how much Laura is consenting to the experience that's going on. So that kind of changes their relationship between who is the ultimate perpetrator. But also something on this note that I think I've brought up to Asha before too. If you're familiar with the show White Lotus, I'm obsessed with it, and the creator of that
Mm-hmm.
show, Mike White, makes sure
Yes.
that in every single season there's gay character or a gay character that does bad things. I think on the same lens that queer folks want to be portrayed in always these perpetrator roles, but also I think there's this fear of, since you want to support the queer movement, you also can't showcase that there are bad parts and toxic parts of all types of relationships. Queer people have the capacity to be loving as they have the capacity to make mistakes and fumble in love and have these bad relationships, and it doesn't make queerness not valid to be open to exploring the bad parts as well. So I really like that part of telling that you're going to see two young women make mistakes, not be great, negative towards each other. Again, it's vampires, so it's all going to be amplified by life and death, right? But they're not fully great characters, either of them.
Well, so much of what you said like resonated with me. First of all, like talking about like adapting a piece and like so much of the original having in it what you want to bring to it. I just directed a couple of months ago, I directed a production of Frank Vedekin's original Spring Awakening text. And I was specifically looking to do like a queer presentation of it, and I worked on like adapting the script just to give a slightly better English translation that would still be free to produce. And I was like, I feel like who I am as a person, many people may hear that I'm doing like a queer adaptation of something and think I changed a bunch of stuff. No, not really. There's just a lot of gay stuff in that text. Like Vatican was, had a very open lifestyle in that regard. And I think that a lot of people think that a lot of queerness lives exclusively in the present, and that's extremely not true. Like we've been around.
It's funny, we were just talking about this recently, this idea of what do they call them? Boston marriages, right? So in the
Oh, I'm
19th
not familiar.
century, in the 19th century in the US, like particularly in the Northeast, this became kind of a trend, was that women were able to figure out legal functions for cohabitation, for partnership, that even though they couldn't legally be married, they figured out a way to do it and also still like be part of society. I'm talking about rich women. Let's be
Of course,
totally. It's a
right.
little different. Like Anne Lister. This is in the UK, but there was a really famous. There's a television show about it. Gentleman Jack. I'm gonna make everybody
Uh,
watch this. It's so good.
Everybody I know who enjoys Gentleman Jack treats it like you have to watch it. This is mandatory.
Yeah, but it's the idea of like, well, these relationships have been happening. It's not a new phenomenon. It is what is legal, what is acceptable in society to the point of like that And this is still an issue today, right? People lose family members just trying to be themselves.
Yeah.
So, we there's a through line, a historical through line, but also there's a truth to it to saying like actually this was a queer story in the 18th century. We didn't have to make it that way. We're just opening up new dimensions for new audiences.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I also really loved hearing about like not presenting queer characters in the binary of good or bad. I feel like this is true of a lot of depictions of marginalized communities where characters are either terribly evil and it's like, ah, you're doing all these horrible things, but then people overcorrect and depict them as literally can do no wrong forever. And that is equally harmful representation because it is dehumanizing. It doesn't show that like marginalized people are people who exist in the world around you and can do a variety of good and bad things, and also like puts everybody to the standard of like if you're not if you as a human being are not existing in a 100% good way, then you are bad, TMTM, and that's just not a fair way of treating anybody.
Yeah, no, that point is so interesting to me because I think young people, a lot of young queer people, I've had that experience where you like there's an extra need to be like interesting at the family parties, like be extra on good behavior, like prove that you're like air quotes one of the good ones. And that's just not exclusive to the queer experience. That's I mean any person who's experienced like minority and being isolated, right? So but that inherently is saying that your identity isn't valid, that you have to prove your worth as a good person above this identity that's marginalized when no, people are just people and like you're as valid as any other person, and every person just because a queer relationship might have toxicity and not work out, that doesn't make again queerness invalid. Like people are going to suck and be awesome all the time no matter who they are. And again, like you're coming to watch a vampire story, so I wouldn't come if you come see my Carmilla, I wouldn't come out with the expectation that like wow, like lesbians are awesome, because I don't think that's exactly like I mean lesbians are awesome, but
Yes.
women are violent and women have repressed wants, and people who grow up with repressed wants sometimes don't do things that they end up proud of or sometimes don't make the best choices. So I think our story is more about exploring that like sticky feminist raw anger that kind of bubbles below the surface of girls who have been told who they should be and what they have to do.
Yes, absolutely. Support depictions of women's rights and women's wrongs.
Yes, exactly. That honestly should be our tagline. Yes, women's
Yes.
rights and wrong.
So it sounds like this story has a lot of big emotions for whatever role an actor is playing. Remind me, are y'all performing the piece as well as adapting it, or are there other actors playing the lead roles?
There are other actors in the piece. It's a five person piece, but we are playing Laura and Carmilla and we're swapping.
Lovely. I would love to hear what it's been like for the two of you to switch roles, like in the rehearsal slash performance spaces.
I would love to share like the origin of where we got the idea, because just credit
Please.
where credit's due. Because me and Asha actually met in an acting class. We did a 5 week scene study course with Benjamin Bass at Broken Mirror Studio, which shout out,
Yes.
I highly recommend it. Um,
Yes.
but we were assigned a scene where I was playing Judas and Asha was playing Jesus, and Ben said to us, "Wow, that'd be really cool to see what that would have been like if you guys flipped it, since they were such opposing characters." And that
Mm.
started getting the wheels turning of like, huh, that would be really cool. And Asha had this idea of, hey, I know this novella and I think this might be a good system to try that mechanic out. So shout out Ben for giving us the idea of exploring the duality. But very interesting way to go about a piece, because the deeper and deeper I get into one character, and like you as an actor, you start figuring out their wants and their needs, and you justify them to yourself. But
Mm.
then you have to flip it around and be like, how do I feel absolute and true in this completely other narrative on the situation?
Yeah, absolutely.
And even in the writing process, because we have been co-working this, the whole thing, we're collaborating on the script, everything. And it's interesting because each of us can read the novella and interpret the characters and the motivations and all these things differently. That is the beauty of fiction. So we came into the writing not always agreeing on what we think this character means or is trying to do and things like that. But grappling with that, I think, has made it such a stronger script because usually if you're writing in isolation, you don't get feedback like until pretty late in the process. We were
True.
constantly giving each other feedback. And so and even doing a table read with the actors a few days ago sparked more ideas because the actors bring that magic, and you hear somebody's voice and you think, man, I want to write something for them. So it's not just in the acting but even in developing who these characters are. And I'll say we depict them very differently. It's really
Mm,
it is really like two different shows.
that's really cool. So, obviously, encouraging audiences to check out more than one performance so they can see all of these different takes on these characters.
Well, and also, if folks do wanna come and wanna come twice, thank you if you do that. We are still seeking feedback as well, because we're doing our reading with the hope of having a full production for Fringe in the fall, so we are
Oh,
still in that
great.
process. Yeah, this reading is really for us to, like, this play has been bouncing around me and Asha's heads, and it's like, okay, now what does it look like when it's out there? And like Asha said, we had different opinions all the time. And what's cool about writing something with someone, which also holds you more accountable, every time you do something, every time I would write something, Asha would have to be like, okay, why? And if I couldn't answer that
Mm,
question, yeah, why? Why would they say that? It doesn't make sense that they would say that. The way I was reading it, I don't think she would say that. So why is she? And you have to constantly and the audience is going to do that too. Anytime you go see something, audiences are smart. They're going to say, why would that character be in that room? Was there a reason for them to be in that room? And if we hadn't had the chance to figure out, like, I don't know, why would they be there? Like, did we just want them to be there and didn't get a chance to justify it? Each other has been helpful, but also again, we have been in a silo with this script up until like 2 weeks ago when we got our cast together. It'll be great to get some more feedback from the public. So also, if you want a hand in helping us adapt this adaptation, please come to the reading for that too.
yes, that's what I love about I produce and participate in a lot of new work myself, and that's a part of it I really love is just like hearing honestly from the audience like what their experience was with it and just like knowing that this work that I am working with is an evolving creature of sorts. Like that this still growing. It's still growing up.
And everyone has blind spots. Everyone. This is a normal part of the development process. And it kind of reminds me of like a writer's room on a television program, right?
Yeah.
That you get the instant feedback and the churning of the ideas. And there's so much more when there's another brain on the project. And so
Mhm.
now we're ready to bring on even more brains, which is a lot of fun.
And
Yeah.
what's been really cool about because when we did it for the reading, it was the first time actually me and Ash had watched each other do it in a while. Because again, we had been talking about the script and writing it, but we hadn't
Right.
really done a lot of performing it because we were still waiting for the reading. I Asha watched me do it and was probably like, "Oh my goodness, yeah, that's different than what I was thinking." And I watched Asha do it, and I remember like I forget what the line was. I guess I won't say it because I don't want to spoil anyway. But there was a moment where Asha did something, and I was like, "Oh my god, that's how you view this moment." Gonna do that, but that
Mm.
is so cool. And yes, and that's right. Just like my Laura, when we get to that point in the story, isn't that person, which again is the cool part of us switching it. Because another part of the initial reason we wanted to do that anyway, every single person has so much to offer, and like no matter how a script is, like you're always going to be bringing a bit of yourself into it. So based on like who Asha is and who Asha is as an artist and performer, the Laura she gets to by the end of the play is different than mine. I think it's both really equally cool, even though it's a different feel. Like the goal, I don't think was to line up our Lauras, line it up so the script makes sense and the person has a similar journey. But how I feel, you're gonna see that that's maybe different than how Asha feels by the end,
Oh,
which will interchange how the audience maybe feels by the end and who they like by the end based on our performances. Who is for their version the
Who they
antagonist.
find yeah, it's who they find sympathetic or who they gravitate towards may change, And that's
Mhm.
fine. Again, the beauty of fiction. I mean, I think that writing something deliberately to leave room for future productions, give the director a little bit of space to make an interpretation. That's really
Yeah.
exciting.
Realizing as we're having this conversation, like in the moment, I'm realizing something that I really enjoy about theater in a broad sense, and then more specifically, this approach of having actors switch roles, because like there have been a lot of different productions where that has been the case. And something that I love about theater is that, like, depending on the direction and the production, and depending on the actor specifically, a million companies could do the same script and be handed the same script, and each of them is going to bring something different to it, specifically the actors, just depending on who the actor is. Whereas, like in a film, for example, whoever they cast in that, like, brilliantly done, great work, you are getting one interpretation and one read on those lines, and that is it. So then, like, to bring it, scale it down even further, like, that's something that's wonderful about having actors switch roles within a production, because you are seeing that larger lovely thing about theater of like getting to see how each actor approaches a role in a much more like concentrated way, and like something like that can live within a specific production, instead of like each actor gets their own bespoke production in which they get to play with these characters. So that's really neat, and I hope that people check this out.
Don't like
Go
you don't
get the
have
Any number of seeing my Carmillas will be the ideal number. I feel personally, just any number of them you want to do. So to that end, can you please let our audiences know when and where this show is happening so that they can go check it out, whatever number of times they want to go do that.
we are performing. Asha, do you have the exact dates and time in your head? I like have to look to double
Oh,
check.
okay. I have them in my head. Yes.
Okay.
They're Thursday, April 3rd at 7 p.m. and Saturday, April 25th at 2 p.m. And these are going to be at Sabubona Creativity Project on East Passyunk. I don't remember you know what? The address is important because Apple Maps has it wrong.
They do, because the theater company that I am the AD of is also doing a show at Salbona. Because there's 11 different shows at Philly Theater Week that are at Salbona. Which, by the way, if you want to just hang out at East Passyunk, like, you're gonna catch a lot of Philly Theater Week. But yeah, the Google, the not Google Maps, Apple Maps
Mm.
messes it up. But you can find that information on the event page for My Carmilla, and it'll be correct and everything.
Actually, if you want to see multiple shows over there, because it's kind of a hub for Philly Theater Week, um, I mean, it may be hot out that week. There's Milk John is down there. There's like
Mm,
all sorts of there's coffee shops. There's all sorts of goodies if you want a
yeah.
little break in between shows.
Good part of the
Yeah.
city.
Yeah, it's a really lovely area. Well, great. I hope everybody listening, if you've made it to this point, I would certainly hope that you would go see this show.
If you've made it to this
Sabrina.
point, you're my dad, I think. You're my father.
Well, Sabrina's father, I hope you come. I hope you go to the show whether you are Sabrina's father or not. That is my official Theater Philadelphia endorsement of this show. Anybody can go see it, even if you are not a parent of. Thank you both so much for joining me. And thank you, whoever has reached this point, for listening. Again, you can check out www.phillytheaterweek.com in order to check out the nearly 50 shows that are happening during 2026 Philly Theater Week, which will be running from April 23rd to May 3rd of 2026. Thank you so much.
Can
Mm.
we plug our links real
Oh, yeah, yeah, please.
Yeah. So on Instagram, we are at My Carmilla the Play. And we're also, we have a website, www.mycarmillatheplay.com.
Fantastic. Go check those out too. Just open up your browser and just have all of these as different tabs.
Exactly. Perfect. Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. It's a
All
fun
right.
afternoon.